Department for Language Learners. Welcome to Round Lake Community Unit School District's Program for Language Learners. This video is intended to give you a brief overview of programming for language learners in our district and the legal requirements pertaining to all staff. If you would like additional clarification or information, please reach out to a language learner curriculum and instruction specialist or administrator. Identification of English learners. Federal and state law specifies steps that must be taken to ensure that English learners are identified, placed properly, and assessed at least annually to measure language growth. State and federal law state that school districts must ensure all English learners have equal educational opportunities and that they can meaningfully participate in their education, guaranteeing all students equal access to the full range of high-quality programs and resources. English learners are entitled to this equal programming throughout their time in the district, beginning in preschool and continuing through their high school coursework. Also, English language support extends from kindergarten through 12th grade up until the age of 21 or 22 if qualifying through a disability. Both undocumented and permanent U.S. residents have the same educational rights. Process for identification of English language learners. School districts are required to have procedures in place to identify potential English learners. As such, Illinois has outlined a process for determining if a new-to-district student is English proficient or an English learner. The first step in this process is to identify a student's language background during enrollment. The enrollment of any new student requires the completion of a home language survey. This survey is available in different languages and is completed within our registration process to determine if a student should be screened for English language proficiency. If a parent or legal guardian answers yes to either of the following required questions, is a language other than English spoken in your home? Or does the child speak a language other than English? The student must participate in language screening. One cannot opt out of screening, as it is a requirement under Illinois law. Once a student with a language background other than English is identified, the student is scheduled to participate in an individual English language proficiency assessment to determine qualification for bilingual services. This assessment must take place within 30 days of enrollment. School districts are required to assess English language proficiency using a valid and reliable assessment tool. Illinois participates in the World-Class Instructional Design and Assessment Consortium, also more commonly referred to as WIDA. WIDA provides our assessment suites, standards, educational tools, and professional development to guide educational programming for multilingual students. Required language screeners. Illinois uses WIDA's language screeners and summative yearly access test to measure English language proficiency. If a student enrolls in our district having previously participated in the WIDA screener or access test from another district in Illinois or another state within the WIDA consortium, those scores are used for placement. The chart on the screen is used by the district to determine which screening tool and cut scores are used based on the student's grade level. The final steps of the process are to determine if the student is eligible for English learner services based on their English language proficiency scores and to determine the best program placement to assist the student in becoming English proficient. The district must inform parents in writing of the assessment results, recommended program placement, and a description of program services in English and the family's home language. If a parent expresses their interest to refuse services, they must provide the district with a signed, written statement that they are refusing services. Parents may choose to refuse all or some services, and they may reinstate services at any time. School districts may not recommend that a parent refuse services for any reason. Bilingual education programs. English learners are entitled to appropriate language instruction to support their development of English language proficiency. Programs designed for teaching English learners must be rooted in theory and effective instructional practices. Here is a graphic that delineates between the two main programming categories. The first is TBE, or Transitional Bilingual Education. When a school has 20 or more English learners from the same language background, the school is required to provide bilingual education. This means teaching core academic subjects in the home language and English as a second language. The other category is TPI, or Transitional Program of Instruction. If the school has 19 or fewer students from the same language background, the school must provide English as a second language instruction and native language support as needed. Bilingual education services are provided full-time and part-time. Full-time and part-time services are not correlated to the amount of instructional time or minutes of service. Rather, it is related to the type of services students receive. In a full-time program, native language and English instruction are provided in all core academic subjects. In a part-time program, native language instruction is provided based on student needs. Both programs require instruction in the history and culture of the country, territory, or geographic area of the native land of the family, and the history and culture of the United States. Take a moment to focus on the statistic on the screen. 75% of English learners in elementary schools have been exposed to Spanish and English from birth. These students are called simultaneous bilinguals. Traditionally, many of our programs for ELs have been developed for students who are strong in their primary language and are completely new to English. An example of this might be someone who moved from Guatemala as a middle schooler and had all prior education and experiences only in Spanish. These students are called sequential bilinguals. The importance of having various program types and offering dual language programming is due to the fact that many of our students are exposed to both English and Spanish outside of school, whether it be at home, in the community, through babysitters, or television. Our programming changes as the needs of our students change. Within the TBE and TPI program types, there are different instructional models. TBE is offered either in full-time or part-time services. In Round Lake, a self-contained class is made up entirely of multilingual students, while a collaboration model has multilingual students who are integrated into a mainstream classroom and receive either language support from an ESL or bilingual Spanish certified teacher. Dual language is a full-time, self-contained model that is offered in Round Lake. At the preschool level, in addition to dual language, a full-time collaboration model is offered. For part-time services, there are self-contained classes offered in grades 6 through 12 through bilingual and sheltered ESL and content classes. Also, a part-time collaboration model is available through multilingual resource support at elementary and through the co-teaching model at secondary. The student's home language and level of English proficiency determines the most appropriate program and instructional model. It is important to note that dual language is a growing program model that will continue to expand and roll up each year with its first cohort of students. So why dual language? The shift from late exit transitional bilingual education to dual language is best practice and grounded in research. Studies have also shown that language minority students instructed in their native language and English perform better on English reading proficiency assessments compared to language minority students instructed only in English at both the elementary and secondary levels. The National Literacy Panel also concluded that learning to read in the home language promotes reading achievement in the second language. Professors Wayne Thomas and Virginia Collier are internationally known for their research on long-term school effectiveness for linguistically and culturally diverse students. Their longitudinal studies conclude that dual language programs are the only programs that assist students to fully reach the 50th percentile in both their first language and second languages in all subjects, and to maintain that level or higher through the end of schooling. It is important to note this research also demonstrates that regardless of the program model, no student reached the 50th percentile before grade 5, as it takes time to develop a second language. Benefits of bilingualism. We are very proud to support our students' home language while teaching them English. Our English Learner programming supports family, culture, and community. These are all key parts of helping students feel comfortable and develop their identity. Also, the ability to read in the home language builds a strong foundation for learning. As students' home language develops, they can access information in either language and transfer the concepts they know from one language to the other. Switching between languages helps develop an active and flexible brain. It helps develop problem-solving skills, helps students learn to focus on the most important information while ignoring extraneous details, and helps develop logical decision-making skills. Access score reports and transitions. Each year, during the months of January and February, students classified as English learners take a summative English language proficiency assessment called Access for ELLs. Access stands for Assessing Comprehension and Communication in English from State to State. The suite of assessments is developed for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This assessment monitors a student's progress towards acquiring both social and academic English proficiency in the language domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. WIDA uses 3 tiers, A, B, and C, for their assessments. While the tiers overlap, each tier assesses a different range of language proficiency, with Tier C being closest to native English proficiency. There are online and paper versions of the assessments. The online assessment is adaptive. Access for ELLs score reports are used for many purposes. The state of Illinois uses scores for accountability purposes and requires districts to use these scores to make annual program placement determinations. Scores are also used to demonstrate progress students have made with acquiring English language proficiency and for instructional planning. Preliminary scores are usually released in late spring. Final scores are released in late summer, and the individual student reports are also distributed at that time. As seen in the graphic, English language proficiency scores range from levels 1 to 6. As a student's English proficiency continues to develop, you will expect to see their scores increase. Here is a sample of an individual student report. At the upper right-hand side, you will want to pay close attention to the student name, the grade level, and the tier of the test that was taken. Now let's zoom in and check out the other 2 portions of the report in more detail. This top portion of the report breaks down the 4 language domains and also adds oral language, literacy, and comprehension scores, which are a combination of domains. At the bottom of this section is the overall score. This is the portion that is used to determine if a student will qualify to transition out of English language services. Students need to reach a 4.8 or higher in the overall category to exit. The 2 columns on the right are the proficiency level and the scale score. Proficiency levels are interpretive scores. They are reported from 1.0 to 6.0. They describe the student's performance in terms of the 6 WIDA English language proficiency levels, which were shown in the graphic on the previous slide. Scale scores track student growth over time across grades and also take into consideration item difficulty. Scale scores should be used over proficiency level to compare student growth from year to year. The bottom portion of the report just focuses on the proficiency level. This portion is particularly helpful for teachers because it breaks down what is appropriate for the student's level of English language proficiency. This could be used for planning purposes and can be taken into consideration when differentiating instruction. Transitioning out of an English learner program. When students meet or exceed the English language proficiency cut score of a 4.8 overall on the access test, they will exit the English learner program. After exiting, all students are required by the state to be monitored for 2 years. This is done to ensure students have continued success in core academic subjects and they will receive additional support if needed. As there are various program structures within the district, it is important to note that students in the dual language program that qualify to exit will lose their English learner status from the state and be monitored. However, they will continue in the dual language program. They will not be switched to a monolingual English classroom. You may wonder why this happens. Our goal in the dual language program is for students to develop biliteracy and bioracy. We want students to be fully proficient in both English and Spanish. Therefore, they will continue the dual language program to help them obtain these goals. There are various reasons that guardians may want or may not want their child to receive EL services. If a guardian does not want their child to receive EL services, it is within their right to refuse these services. They must make a written request to discontinue services. Services can also be reinstated at any time if the family changes their mind. Even when a student with a refusal does not get English language services, they are still legally required to take the access test annually until obtaining a qualifying exit score. Finally, the WIDA website contains a wealth of resources to help you learn more about supporting EL students. If you are ready to learn more, this is a great place to start.